Okay, so 13 new countries were added to BRICS in the last summit meeting they had when they met in October. And I want to discuss these countries that were added to BRICS, the significance of these countries, why they were added to BRICS, and what position they hold. Now, these countries are added as partner countries. These are not to be confused as members. These 13 new additions to BRICS are not members. They are partner countries. We'll talk about what that really means as a partner country and what those countries are. Anyway, so it says right here, BRICS grows, adding 13 new partner countries at historic summit in Kazan, Russia. BRICS held a summit in Kazan, Russia, October 2024, where it expanded 13 partner nations after adding 4 new members. Okay, so the 4 new members were added early this year. We'll talk about what those new members were. The Global South-led organization BRICS is growing. More and more countries support the group's mission to build a multipolar world with alternative economic institutions that are more representative and demographic, not dominated by Western power. So I think it's not news anymore that the reason why BRICS was created, it first started as BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China were the 4 members that started BRIC. And then South Africa, a year later, joined the organization known as BRICS today. That whole thing was created as a repudiation of Western dominance, right? They were to rival NATO, right, which is largely European countries that make up NATO. And so that whole organization started right around 2009. And that was the whole part of it. Ever since then, it has really gained momentum. It has grown. It has become a talk, even while back then when they first started, they were a joke. People said, no, this is not going to go anywhere. It's just going to fizzle out and all of that stuff. It has become a major organization. And they added 4 new members, right, this year to the organization. And now they're adding 13 partner countries. At the historic meeting, China's president, Xi Jinping, referred to BRIC as a vanguard. That's what he said. For advancing global governance reform and reform of international financial architecture. Okay, so here are the 5 members of BRICS, okay, which I mentioned earlier on. These are the 5 original members. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. South Africa is considered as a regional member because they joined a year after BRIC organization was formed back in 2009. So they joined in 2010. Now, 4 new members were added to BRICS, right? They were invited in 2023 and they were added in January of 2024. These members are Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, the UAE. Now, I'm going to tell you, looking at this list of members, I can see why they added these guys in there. Because when you think of BRICS and their strategic positioning and how they're going about this, they're trying to add value to the organization, right? So it has a lot to do with economic strength. What countries within their region and bloc really dominate economically. They look at political strategy. What countries can offer political strengthening to the organization, as well as also have stability in their own country when it comes to political dynamics. Those are the things they think about. So when you look at Egypt, Egypt is a large country, right? Very large, relatively stable as it relates to cultural situation over there. You don't find a lot of upheaval, unrest. They had a situation over the few years back, right? There was a very huge thing, civil unrest, but you don't typically find that. You go to Egypt, there's nothing that rocks the boat in Egypt. They're a large economy, right? I got to tell you, Ethiopia is, I can see why Ethiopia is in this as a member. And I'm very, very proud of Ethiopia. I got to tell you, Ethiopia is one of those countries in Africa that I'm very, very proud of. Ethiopia was the only country in Africa that was never colonized. Ethiopia is right to be in this. Ethiopia was the only country in Africa that was never colonized. They tried to, the Italians tried to colonize Ethiopia in 1894. And the Ethiopians fought them and defeated the Italians, the Battle of Adawa. Ethiopians, they don't play. They were like, not here. They fought them and defeated the Europeans. And Ethiopia today can brag of the fact that they were never colonized. I am so proud of Ethiopians. I think Ethiopians, the people there are beautiful people. The people of Ethiopia are so beautiful people. I mean, the women are gorgeous. I mean, everyone brags about the women in Ethiopia. The women are beautiful. I mean, is there anyone in Africa that really competes with Ethiopian women? They're beautiful over there. It's a beautiful country. You go there, you don't find a lot of the stuff you find going on in Africa happening in Ethiopia. You know, they're very peaceful. They're very kind. They're very laid back individuals. They practice their religion and they just go by their own business. Don't bother anybody. You know, and the economy is relatively stable. You don't find the type of corruption that you find in most part of Africa and Ethiopia. Ethiopia just kind of, they live by their creed, and their religion governs their way of life, and they just move about themselves. But I think history really recognizes Ethiopia as one of those places in Africa that I think most Africa can really be proud of. They were never colonized. Now, the only thing I have, that my only thing with Ethiopia is they need to get rid of the European religion. You know, but other than that, Ethiopia is a great country. And I can see the strategy behind having Ethiopia here. You know, Iran and UAE. Now, here are the 13 partner countries, okay? I call this one the sideshows. These are the sideshows. These are our real members. These are just, you know, hey, hold on, you know, you can stay in the parking lot while we conduct meeting in here. These are the sideshows. But nonetheless, here are the countries they added recently as partner countries: Algeria, Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Turkey, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam, right? So when you look at these countries and look at what they stand, you know, you can kind of see a lot of the stuff I said earlier on, reason why the other members were added in. The other members became members because they offer political strength, right? They offer economic strength. They don't have a lot of instabilities that you would find in many other places in these countries. Corruption is mild in many of these countries. So when you look at that and then contrast that to the 13 partner countries, why they were made partner countries and not members, you can kind of see that this is a stark opposite of all these other countries, right? This is why I call these countries the sideshows. They're not real. These are not. They don't have any significant position or pull when it comes to BRICS. I mean, BRICS a member of BRICS is the cream of the crop. That's where you have your value, because members vote, right? That's the key part. Members have voting rights and veto rights. Just like example, with this go around, when they were considering countries to add, you know, Venezuela was vetoed by Brazil to join these countries. Do you see that? Brazil was a member, one of the original members of BRICS, vetoed and rejected Venezuela from being added or considered as this. Why? Because Venezuela just concluded their election, and Maduro, who's, you know, won by just a slim margin, there was all this talk by the opponent that he was going to cause create some chaos. So there's all of that instability going on over there. So that's why this organization, BRICS, is looking for countries to be a member who don't have that type of instabilities. You can kind of see why, right? Because it helped in terms of military, geopolitical positioning. geopolitical alliance. Because if you find a country who is always having a political turmoil and all of that, it's easy to be vulnerable, right? It can cause an issue, especially when they're trying to make sure they have an airtight, position against NATO. Such country that is politically weak and vulnerable could pose a threat to the organization. That's why so when Brazil vetoed that, it was a done deal. So that the point I'm making is that members have veto and voting rights, right? Partner countries don't. So these partner countries get to attend some events. They don't get to attend the main events, right? So of course, when members meet, now they have like 9 members, right? So there's 5 and 4. So there's 9 members now who are now members of BRICS. These are the ones right here who are 13 partner countries don't get to attend the meetings the members get to attend. So they get to join in some engagement. But like I said, it's sideshows. Because their position economically, their position is very weak. A lot of these countries have a lot of instabilities. I mean, look at Cuba, for God's sakes, right? Cuba is added in here. Kazakhstan, right? The Malaysia. I mean, these are very weak countries. Thailand, Vietnam. These are countries that have such huge instability, but they offer some value. So BRICS is trying to expand this organization and also trying to show diversity, right? The organization is trying to show diversity, which is a stark contrast to NATO. NATO is all European countries, right? European countries that make up NATO. You don't find any of these countries as NATO partners. These are all white countries that make up NATO. So BRICS is trying to show that it is trying to be diverse. And so when you look at the countries that make up BRICS in terms of the member countries, they are strategically put there as members to show diversity, to show that they are opposite of this organization that they are trying to compete against. So they added these countries as partner countries. There's talk and chance that these countries could be pulled to be members of BRICS, right? There's talk that they could be. But so that remains to be seen. Now, let's talk about Kenya for a second. Kenya is also trying to join BRICS. Now, why am I bringing Kenya up? Because Kenya, when you look at countries in Africa, Kenya is the strongest, largest economy east of Africa, in the East Africa. I think it makes sense for Kenya to also be a member of BRICS. Here's why I say that. Right? Here's why I say Kenya's position economically is a strong position. Kenya also is a growing hub of technology. Kenya is known for to be a techie in Africa. Kenya's port, right, is strategic, where Kenya's port is very strategic to where it provides resources economically to neighboring countries. So that is a very key aspect for Kenya. Kenya has also a relatively very stable political situation. Regardless, they had that whole situation that happened with, a few months ago that caused an outbreak riot that went on for months because, Ruto was trying to hike taxes to burden his citizens, and the citizens rejected this. So that is the first we've seen in a long time. They've had some political instabilities, but it's not a known thing in Kenya. Kenya is not known to have, they usually have a smooth transition of government. You go to Kenya. Kenya is a beautiful country. It's relatively peaceful. The Kenyans are good people. They are chilling. They don't bother anybody. And so they are the strongest country in East Africa. Right? So I can see why Kenya. And so Kenya is lobbying China currently, right? Xi Jinping and Ruto is lobbying Xi Jinping to try to be a member of this organization. Now, here's the challenge for Kenya. The challenge for Kenya is that Kenya is seen as a Western puppet. Kenya recently was dubbed as major non-NATO ally by the United States. You kind of see how that is a problem, right? You kind of see how that is a problem for Kenya, who is trying to be part of this organization, who has a lot of the bells and whistles to be part of this organization, things that I've just talked about. But the fact that they are recognized and were recently recognized by Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, US president, as a major non-NATO ally. So that is a contradiction to what BRICS stands for. Kenya also finds itself in a very tough position because its citizens rejected Ruto's proposal, which was influenced and backed by the West in terms of that tax hike proposal. It was something that the World Bank and the IMF influenced him to put out there. So he's seen as someone who takes orders from the West. So that is something that is the reason why I believe, even while Kenya is ripe for this, it's a stumbling block for Kenya. Now, is it over for Kenya? I don't think so. But I think that Kenya will have to take a major position coming up in recent time. Kenya will have to do something that shows that its position is independent of itself and is not influenced by the West, and make a decision or take a stance on something that is not seen to be influenced by the West, but based on its own individuality and for the interest of its own country. I think if Kenya does something significant like that, Kenya will be put in as BRICS, as a member of BRICS, not one of these sideshows. Now, I would love to see these three countries as members of BRICS, but they have uphill challenges based on what I think this organization and how this organization picks members. I'm talking about BRICS now. I would love to see Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger as BRICS, but it's almost never going to happen. Here's why: because of what I said earlier on, right? Because the organization BRICS isn't just looking for, rogue countries. The organization is not just looking for countries who are just defiant no matter what. Countries who just are, a wild card. And while Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have impressed a lot of us, most of us in Africa, with their stance against European influence and dominance in the country, kicking out, France, kicking out the United States forces in their region, right? The way they took power, even while we are proud of that because it's an indictment against France in the country, it also could be seen and by this organization as very, very rogue. The coup, I'm talking about how they came in as being a coup, right? Because it's a political instability. It's a political vulnerability, right? Nobody wants someone part of their membership who can't take care of their house. So while Ibrahim Traoré, who is now the leader of Burkina Faso, who came in, he came in a coup, 2 coups in the year that he came in. No, he toppled the guy that toppled the one that was elected, that was democratically elected. So while we see him as a beloved leader and we love him and he's going to have to prove himself to be that viable leader that can keep his country sustained, politically stable, economically viable, and he's doing it. He's doing it. So I have no doubt that Burkina Faso, if you ask me, within the Sahel, Burkina Faso might very well be the first country in the Sahel that might become a member of BRICS. It ain't going to happen in the next couple of years. Probably happen in the next 5 years, I think, which would have given him enough time, because when his people put him there, they put him there to rule them in 5 years, for 5 years, I should say. So that's good enough time for him to really build the reputation of his country on a global stage, not just with us Africans. We are all proud of what he's done, right? But we're talking about global stage now. There's a different player, right? There's something different here on a global stage. So in other words, that insecurity problem that both he and neighboring countries, Niger and Mali, are going through, right? The mess that was put there by the forces that they kicked out, the Western forces, France and the United States, who didn't do anything to protect the country. He's going to have to iron that out. So they've got a lot of problems and a lot of work to do. I think it's a good step in the direction, right step in the direction where he, as well as Mali and Niger, formed the defense pact. That is a great step in the right direction. I would guarantee you that that is probably something that he got from Vladimir Putin as an advice to iron that part out. So once they're able to really secure their borders, reduce the number of insurgencies there, and they can show that they are politically stable, I think that will give them a fighting chance, right, to be a member of BRICS, Burkina Faso, I mean, economically, right? He's obviously doing things that are right in terms of helping to build his country's economy, putting money in infrastructure, putting money in their minerals, gold, building a refinery, gold refinery that would help to boost the economy of the economy of his country. I guarantee you this leader has his eyes set on BRICS. And a lot of the moves that he's making is because he wants to be part of that larger organization, which he sees would be a good, strong defense strategy for his country, to protect his country, even while his country is small. They may not have the military might, but they are plugged into an organization like BRICS with a large military. I mean, this organization already has 45% of the world's population are members of BRICS. And that's just of the 5 members, not to include the 4 that were added. So that's a different situation when you add that number in. So that's a very strong alliance to join. And so the leader of Burkina Faso, he's doing the right thing in terms of really the position he's taking, right? Also, he elected to put drones in his country, right? These are great military strategies. To have his own country have the military strength to watch over his borders so they can catch or combat any of those threats that they left to France, who said they were actually had strong surveillance, who were not. They were just gathering intelligence for themselves. And they were not really providing those intelligence to the countries they said that they were over there trying to protect, which is why they were kicked out of those countries. So to have drones, military drones, really strong ones, to really survey his country so he can see threats within his borders so he can neutralize them, those are very good and smart strategies. That is him showing that he's trying to really solve that issue as relates to insurgencies, terrorist insurgencies in his country and border areas. And I believe that Niger and Mali are also following suits. So these countries have a lot of work to do. But I'm excited to see these countries, one of these countries in the Sahel, to be, because these countries stand for what BRICS stands for. These countries stand for what BRICS stands for, right? This country is right. These countries, right, ripe for the values that BRICS stands for, but they just have to demonstrate it with the other things that BRICS needs them to have, because you need to come on as a member with value. You have to have something of value to come in as a member, and you have to have your political house cleaned up. You have to be economically strong within that region that you are in, because that is a strength for that organization. What do you guys think? These are my analysis. What do you think about what I just said? Because I like that this organization, BRICS, now has gained momentum. I like that it has become something of significance that that rivals NATO. I like the positioning they're taking. They also have a lot of work to do, because these are developing countries, right? So a lot of the people they put in there, when they're vetting countries, they have a lot of work, because a lot of countries don't have their, for lack of a better word, shit together. So they're working with what they're working with. There's a lot of, so when you look at developing countries and compare them to developed countries, which are mostly countries that are NATO, they're part of the NATO alliance, which is why when BRICS started, they saw it as a joke. What countries are you really going to pick? So they are picking from what they can pick from. However, the 5 members of BRICS, these are strong countries. but they still have issues, right? They still have issues. These are all called developing countries, right? They're not fully developed yet, according to the definition of developed countries, but they are strong developing countries. Now, you can argue that China is a developed country. Yes, I would agree with you. You can argue that Russia is a developed country. Yes, I would agree with you, right? When you look at the other ones, these are all developing countries, the members, right? And so it's an uphill challenge for the organization too, to be able to go through what they have and pick the best out of what they have, given the guidelines that they are working with. But they've seemed to maintain since they started in 2009, and they've expanded. So I think it'll be interesting to see who are going to be added as new members. I think that when you look at the west part of Africa and the east part of Africa, I think for me, Kenya is going to take it in the east part of Africa. I think Kenya is. The southern part of Africa already, South Africa already took that spot, Easter. Now there's only remains to be seen who is going to dominate the west part of Africa. Nigeria is seen as should be the one taking that position, right? So Nigeria will need to clean up some few things if it's going to represent itself as a giant of Africa for the western region of Africa, right? Of course, the northern part of Africa, we see Egypt has dominated. So that's how they're going with this thing, right? And then when you look at the middle part of it, the Sahel, there's got to be a country from that part also. And I think Burkina Faso might very well be that one. But anyway, what do you guys think about my analysis? Let me know. Leave your comments. Like the video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.
Det finns ingen annan där som kan stå här by my side, oh why. Sättet du rör på det får mig att dö för dig baby. För de här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. På det jag lägger av min tid och jag vill ha dig. Du får mig känna safety. Vi kan nog leva